Welcome back to Lenz's Comic Corner Classics as Non-Classics. This is episode number 913 and Doubleshot number 807. I got two Iron Man trades. First up is a classic story from the late 1980s. This is Iron Man Armor Wars, collecting issues 225 to 232, written by Dave Michelini and Bob Layton. Yeah, this is one of their most well-known stories because when people think of these two guys, they can think of Demon in the Bottle, this story, and several other classic stories. Those of you curious about the armor Tony Stark is wearing in this cover, that is actually, believe it or not, his Silver Centaurian armor. Yeah, he wore this when he was part of the West Coast Avengers. Yep. And yes, this armor did pop up in Iron Man 2. This storyline is the last time he officially wore this particular armor, because after this he wore a slightly different armor, which basically after this particular story he went back to the classic red and yellow design costume. The Silver Centaurian is simply put an armor that has got like white limbs, and here's a better look at it. Yeah, this is the full look at the thing. Yeah, it's basically like dark red with dark midsection, dark part of the helmet. Yeah, it's like it's like all the red stuff is made darker, and the yellow is made to white. The story for Armor Wars is this. While Tony Stark fought a villain called Force, he discovers that some of his technology is basically his. So he goes on. He basically, this is sort of a crime, sort of a mystery, sort of who stole his stuff. He does kind of prove it was Justin Hammer, but he couldn't exactly get enough evidence to get him convicted of the damn thing. Nope, he couldn't. But he took out the character Firepower, which after the storyline, the character would never show up again until toward the end of Mad Fractions 1 in 2012. Yeah, I'm not kidding about that. Yeah, this character Firepower, those of you curious of what the heck this guy looks like, yeah, he has an odd appearance. Now, some of you might mistake him for being, I don't know, the Ironmonger because of how freaking big he is. Yeah, look how big he is. I mean, appearance-wise, you might mistake him for the Ironmonger. But here's the thing. Obadiah Stane, aka the original Ironmonger, had been dead at this point for 2 years. Yeah, he was a character created by Denny O'Neil back in the early 80s. When he was the writer of this book. Yeah, Dave Michelini is one particular writer who was one of those writers who wrote a good majority of this particular series. He wrote this thing from like the late 1970s up until on and off, up until like the early 1990s. This was released roughly in the year 1987. And the storyline was also loosely adapted for Iron Man 2. Yes. So not only Demon in a Bottle was loosely adapted for that film, this storyline was as well. It's also been adapted for a 2-part episode of the Iron Man animated series from 1990s, which is a really good storyline, by the way. And I believe this was also adapted for an arc in season 2 of the Iron Man Arm Adventure series, which my friend Edgar does not like the series at all. I think it's a pretty decent series. Though the problem thing is you have Tony Stark becoming Iron Man as a teenager as opposed to an adult. Yeah, even I don't know what was the whole purpose of that, but it was still a really entertaining series to watch. Yeah, but here's the other thing. The fact that Bob Layton is associated with this particular story, he did the finishes for these issues, but he wasn't the main artist of these issues. No, the artists of these issues were in fact Barry Windsor Smith, who also co-wrote these issues, and Mark Bright. Bob Layton worked on the inks for these issues. Yes. The editor of these issues was in fact Mark Greenwald. Yes. As a matter of fact, his book basically he was writing at this point in time, which was Captain America, a book he wrote for 16 years, writing I think it was like 130 issues he wrote for. Hey, he wrote it for a long ass time. They sort of have an issue that crosses over with a storyline that he was writing at that point called The Captain, a storyline that lasted for 2 years. Yeah, where Captain America had to give up being Captain America because the Commission the Commission of Superhuman Activities didn't like him very much, and he was fired. Well, he had to quit and gave up the role and became the captain. And the whole purpose of his appearance in here was so that he can get his silver shield that he has. Oh, and by the way, guess what happened to his outfit he wears? Yes, I'm not kidding about this. Yeah, his outfit was given to another character, but with a different identity. Mm-hmm. Yeah, here he is. This is Steve Rogers as the captain. Those of you who look curious, though, what happened to the suit after the storyline? This went to John Walker, who became U.S. agent. He was previously Captain America. He also took the shield as well. And the shield was designed by Tony Stark. And the reason why he got the shield was because he asked for it. Yep, that's the whole purpose of this. Yeah. And it also did with the guardsman stuff, which is quite interesting. Oh yeah, and also during the course of these issues, Iron Man had to resign from the West Coast Avengers because of the storyline. Yeah, he had to resign. Oh, and by the way, yeah, during the course of the storyline, if you're curious though, what happened to the armor itself? It blew up. Though it was later rebuilt and put in his Hall of Armors. Though he later would put on armor he would wear for pretty much up until I think it was like the early I think it was almost around the mid 90s he wore this. He wore this armor for a long time. Yeah, it was one of his more longer armors, but I've heard that his Mark IV armor, he wore the armor for about 5 years. This one he wore for a pretty good period of time up until the events of the Crossing, which, yeah, it's considered to be one of the worst crossovers of all time. Here is the new armor that he wears, and I think, as far as I can tell, I think he wears his armor. I mean, it's basically back to the classic style, which you gotta praise the artist for this. Yeah, and the artist who did this issue and one who designed this armor is, I mean, I'm sure, yeah, Bob Lane probably gets credit for a lot of this stuff. I'm sure he does. Yep. But I'm sure he probably drew this armor himself. I'll probably ask him about this next time I see him at Comic-Con. I might ask him about that. Yeah, and this armor makes his debut in the Pendulum issue of this very storyline. Yeah, let's see. Who is the artist of this issue? I don't think it's Layton. No, I don't think it's Layton. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, I think it might be Mark, right. So it's a really good looking armor, and I think he would wear it. Yeah, he wore it for pretty much the rest of the time up until like the Crossing and the course Onslaught. Classic storyline. I'm giving this book a 10 out of 10. It's really good. I know my friend Edgar probably can't wait to cover this storyline. Oh yes, I'm sure he just can't wait for that. Yep. Alright, next up is something else Iron Man related. This is Iron Man 2020. Yeah, we look at this and we're like, wait, is that Iron Man? No, this isn't Iron Man from the future. Yeah, from what I know about this particular character, he's a distant cousin of Tony Stark. Yep. These are pretty much the majority of his appearances he made over the course of a period of about 30 years. Yes, these were his appearances. Amazing Spider-Man A number 20, Machine Man Volume 2 issues 1 through 4, Death's Head number 10, Iron Man 2020 number 1, Astonishing Tales Iron Man 2020 1 through 6, and material from What If Volume 2 and number 53. Yeah, technically his first appearance is actually in Machine Man number 3. Yeah. And here's kind of the weird thing about this particular character. Apparently Marvel cannot keep this continuity straight. It's like, okay, yeah, Annual 20 was technically not his first appearance. You can tell by the damn cover. Yeah, this is not his first appearance. It says, he's back, the Iron Man of 2020. Which, and to make it tell with this damn cover, yeah, this is not his debut appearance. Yeah, he's a creation of Tom DeFalco. Yes, the guy who at one point was editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. And was a writer for a lot of the comic books published this period of time. Yeah, he wrote Amazing Spider-Man, Yeah, he wrote Amazing Spider-Man this period of time, up until around the mid-90s. He wrote this book, Thor. I'm trying to think what other books he wrote. I think he wrote Fantastic Four this period of time. And I think he may have wrote Avengers. I'm not really sure. I know he didn't write the Iron Man title this period of time. Yeah, that was Dave Michelini. Yeah. The Astonishing Tales, this particular thing, now, has no connection to the original Astonishing Tales series from the 70s. This was originally a digital comic, which, by the way, if you read these issues in here, I think it's 6 issues. They're only 8-page stories. Yeah, that's because it's one of those multi-story things. Yeah, and the artists who did some of these issues, like, it's like this person is a Iron Man artist. Yeah, it looks like it was the artist from, I'd say, from the early 2000s. I don't think this is not Quesada. No, I know for a fact this is not Quesada's artwork. But I can tell by the style of this thing, this is pretty much the style of the early 2000s Iron Man, when this was basically Volume 3, despite the fact this was published in, I think it was like 2010, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. It's a really good set of issues for Iron Man 2020, but there's no real order to its appearances at all. Though the annual was kind of his backstory in a way, but the story in here is virtually ignored by other books. The Machine Man miniseries is actually really good. Yeah, like I mentioned before, when I talk about Machine Man, when I talk about Marvel Zombies, he's a creation of the late Jack the King Kirby, and Machine Man from the 80s, that was actually a revival of the character, and of course featured appearance by Jocasta in a completely different look than she's known for wearing over the years, or at least for having over the years, yes. Also, Iron Man was wearing the black costume at this point in time. Yep. Excuse me. I don't know if this was the symbiote or if this was the black costume. Yeah, I have no idea. I appreciate though the fact that Marvel took the time to actually put in here the entire 4-issue miniseries, not just 3 and 4, because I'm sure some people might be a bit confused by getting, I don't know, like confusion about, how should I put this? Of like the order of the story is like, okay, we pop up in the middle of a story for these characters. Yeah, it's particularly a little weird. Yeah. Of course, they also mention here the first time that Machine Man met Jocasta, which is back in Marvel 2-in-1 number 93. Yes, that was the first time they met, and that's when they started a relationship with each other. Yeah. And her look, man, this looks almost nothing like Shui looked before. Yeah, it's a radically different look, and this is supposedly set about 40 years in the future. So, okay, 80s, so is this implying this is in the 2020s? It's a possibility. The Astonishing Tales one, that roughly takes place 3 years after his original appearance. Roughly, I guess, takes place in 2023, and he's from 2020. My guess is the reason why Marvel decided to release this last year was because in 2 years it will be 2020. Well, at the time, anyways. Yeah, 2020 is actually going to be next year, mind you. But I do love the stories in here. They're really good. Now, the writers of these issues in here are the following. There's a lot of writers here. We have Fred Schuler. Let's see. I don't think he does this issue of the Amazing Spider-Man. I don't think he does. We also have Ken McDonald. Tom DeFalco writes the Machine Man miniseries. Simon Fruman, Walt Simonson, Daniel Merlin Grubby, Barry Windsor Smith, and Bob Wallach. I think it's pronounced his last name. The artist, Mark Beecham, Herb Trimp, Barry Windsor Smith, Brian Hitch. Yes, Brian Hitch. The guy who's currently the artist for Hawkman. Bob Willock, William Rizzo, Lou Kang, and Manny Gallen. Yeah. Stuff in here is actually pretty good. I'm going to get this book roughly a 9.5 out of 10. It's good. But not as classic, I guess, as the Iron Man War storyline. Yeah. Like, if you want to get into the Damage Elite Iron Man stuff, I definitely recommend Armor Wars. I would also recommend Demon the Bottle. There's a boatload of stories. And Dave Michelini is considered to be one of the most definitive Iron Man writers of all time. Bob Layton himself is considered to be the most definitive Iron Man artist of all time. Yeah, but Michelini is one of those definitive writers. Not only him, but Denny O'Neil. You gotta include Stan Lee in that particular category. I'm trying to think who else is a good one. I could say Matt Fraction, but my friend Edgar doesn't like the end of his run because it goes with Mandarin. Let's see. I would not include Bendis because he had an okay run. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact the Slott is, from what I can tell, if you read the Iron Man issues currently, it has sort of that similar feeling to that of the Dave Michelini run. That's just my opinion anyways, okay? So, that's it for this particular review. I was hoping to do a review of Season 8 of Case Closed, but that's not going to happen due to the fact the final episode is an hour and a half long, though it originally aired for 2 hours. Yeah, so expect to see a review of that tomorrow, along with a review of the newest episode, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, okay? But do see you next review. Bye.